Thanks for tuning in to our last episode in the series. So sad, but not to worry, we'll be back with our next series on healthy buildings, where we'll have some guest appearances to mix things up. So without further ado, we're going to answer some of your general questions on improving indoor air quality. So first question, is it possible to apply these solutions to supplemental systems?
In some cases, yes. The supplemental systems would have to be evaluated to verify that they can be retrofit to accommodate increased ventilation, improved filter efficiencies, and just to make sure there is room to install a UVGI system if needed.
All right, next question. Air quality in elevators is a concern. Is there anything that can be done?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done, but the first thing you have to remember is to be socially conscious. Wear your mask all the time. Social distancing is important. I know elevators are small, but minimize the number of people in an elevator. That can be challenging in a taller building, but to be a little patient and do things a little slower maybe than we did before. The elevator manufacturers have taken this challenge on, and some of that is HEPA filters, some of that is PCO, some have done some things with ionization systems. The main thing, in my opinion, when it comes to elevators is making sure you understand as you enter a building or you enter an elevator, maybe what they're doing so that you know how you're being protected. A little education is an important thing, especially in these times.
All right. So are we looking at the long-term removal of hand dryers?
We don't think so. We don't have to remove them long-term. We would recommend is that they are deactivated during the COVID period. The hand dryers can spread germs in the restrooms, and they should be discontinued. They can aerosolize, bacteria and viruses and spread them around in the space. So they should be deactivated. They're still in the long term. They're still better than using paper towels. They're environmentally friendly, but in the short term during this period, they should be deactivated.
I agree with that. We want to save some trees, right? All right, next question. How would you rank the solutions to improve indoor air quality? And is it really up to the landlord, tenant, and best practices being pushed by the tenant?
I think it's important to understand the opportunities and what systems you can upgrade and what systems the landlord needs to upgrade. But we like to look at these things in a general order, right? So dilution, bringing in more outside air to dilute the contaminants in the space is very important. Filtration, which would just stop the particles from being recirculated in the event that there is particles generated in the space. And then there's active mitigation strategies like UVGI, ultraviolet light, and PCOs that actually can kill the virus in the air as it passes through the air system. Humidification, while it is a strategy to reduce exposure to COVID, it's not an active strategy to kill the virus. It's also very important to work with your landlord as you come back to work in your buildings to establish their plan, reduce exposure to COVID. And then as a tenant, you can either layer things onto that or you can work with the landlord, negotiate change.
Yeah, I think having the conversation early with the landlord is very important. You could impact what they're actually doing in terms of mitigating COVID within the buildings. Then on top of that, you could maybe share the costs or the installation of some of these systems.
Okay, why are ions in this space a health concern?
Ionization is a strategy that actually creates ions in the space, and having ions in the space in general is not a health concern. The health concern is how many of them you breathe on a regular basis and what the concentration of those ions may be. So the long-term health impacts to higher concentrations of ions in and around our bodies, in our lungs, is the actual health concern, and how it will impact our health 10, 20 years from now is what's unknown. So for those reasons, we're looking at ionization in an occupied mode as a health concern. So we're not recommending that. But it does have a place, ionization does have a place in unoccupied cleansing of space and surfaces.
So we'd recommend that in the unoccupied mode, after hours or even during a lunch break when the space is empty.
And this is our last question. It's a big one. Is indoor air quality standard language in a lease? And as a tenant, how do I get my landlord to upgrade my systems in my lease agreement or negotiations?
I'm going to start with that's a really big question.
Yeah.
So we'll break it down, and Des and I'll probably both answer chunks of this. But the idea that indoor air quality is a very important aspect of your lease, and it's very much neglected in most leases. You'll find very little language related to indoor quality. You'll usually find things about temperature and hours of operation. But in this transition from COVID to post-COVID, we need to do a better job as professionals, architects and engineers, brokers, and landlords to make buildings safer and healthier. And that starts with defining what's required legally for indoor air quality. So it starts with making sure that we can improve that with, whether it's passive or active mitigation strategies, and having them written into the lease. The one thing we've been talking to clients about is, even if your lease is 3 or 4 years from renewal, you may want to consider at this point renewing early so that you can use that renewal leverage with your landlord to improve the indoor air quality at a cost that wouldn't be an out-of-pocket expense to the tenant. The landlord can amortize that over your lease and support improvements with a new lease. So that is one way to get things like, increased filtration, increased dilution, and maybe some active strategies implemented into the building.
But you bring up a good point there, Ray, talking about cost, which is always a concern in leases. But when you look at the return on investment, a simple return on investment for increased ventilation, improved filtration, and possibly UVGI systems or even PCO systems, their impact on the indoor air quality, which is directly related to absenteeism, which is proven in various studies. Absenteeism in the workplace, it makes these options very attractive, especially for the tenants, but also for some of the landlords who recognize that having better indoor air quality in their buildings will attract better tenants, higher paying tenants. So it's really important.
Do you want to add anything else to that long question?
I think it's important that we look past COVID, right, and understand how indoor air quality is only one piece of a healthy building. Healthy building strategies involve a lot more than just indoor air quality. So, we're looking at things like temperature ranges, we're looking at hours of operation, we're looking at actual effectiveness of the airflow within a space, how air moves. So it's not just the quality of the air, it's how we condition it, how we maintain and control temperatures, and how we allow it to move through the space to create a higher level of comfort and create a higher level of human productivity. If we can eliminate things that distract our mind, like temperature and airflow and contaminants in the air, we're more focused, we're more productive, and we're going to move our companies and our businesses and our organizations in a better direction for more productivity.
Yeah, we talk about that study that was done in Harvard all the time, Ray, in our presentations, and even probably through questions as well. There was a metric developed by Joe Allen, who's a professor of public health up in Harvard. The metric is to double the ventilation in the space costs approximately $40 per person per year, but the return on productivity equates to $6,500 per year. So even if you're off by a couple of points, that's a really impressive metric, and it just goes to demonstrate how important indoor air quality is and how it really impacts productivity and occupants' health.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for all of the amazing answers to all of the questions that our clients sent over. So that's a wrap. Finished our series, and I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and also please keep a lookout for our next series on healthy buildings.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Take care.